It's been 50 minutes of stress. But I am here and Kelly is here. And I'm so grateful to all of you who have stuck with us. Um,
Same.
um,
Okay.
Kelly, thank you so much. I was saying before we went live that I really didn't want to spend 47 minutes of your life on tech problems. And I really appreciate you sticking with me. I've been so looking forward to having this conversation and thank you. Thank you for being here, for your patience, for your understanding. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. I too have been really looking forward to this. I love the work that you do. So it's an honor to be here and to be asked.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm going to take a breath.
Me
Oh,
too.
we have everything work.
Please.
And I want to move from my stress brain into my um into having a bit of space
Mm.
for this kind of conversation. Um oh, I did make a cup of tea that has gone cold, but I'm still going to drink it.
I've got my tea here too. And guess what? It's chamomile tea.
Oh, that's good for stress.
I recommend having a little cup of chamomile next to you as you write.
Yeah,
Or as you do anything Substack related, because you never know what you're going to run across tech wise.
yeah, absolutely. Well, it was actually when I was prepping for our conversation, Kelly, this was where I wanted to start because I feel like we all have busy lives and busy days and a lot going on in our hearts and minds and inboxes and to-do lists. And I was really curious when you are feeling that urge, like I've got something to say, I've something I want to write. Like how do you set up your environment to support you to do the kind of work that you enjoy, feel like nourishes you and helps you kind of communicate something that matters?
I really don't have what I would call a ritual
Right.
or anything like that. I'm a very intuitive writer. And so I don't have a regular discipline, although I write constantly. So it's sort of like when I feel that call to write, that's when I start writing. And I'll sit down, and I'm just being really honest here. I will sit down on the couch,
Mm.
relaxed with my little iPad and type on there. That's my main thing.
Sure.
I usually type in Google Docs or sometimes in Word. And I'll usually have some chamomile tea by my side. And then I just kind of dive in. But I do have processes and things I use. There's not really a ritual that I use.
Okay. And when you have the feeling that you're going to explore something painful or something, excuse me, something that could be, Hmm. Take a breath, Claire. Oh, when you are exploring something that you think could be tricky, that it could touch off something painful or traumatic, or something that you think um, maybe there's still some vulnerability around, are there ways? I suppose I'm curious if your process is the same, and also if there are ways that you kind of guide yourself through it that allows you to keep yourself safe as you're getting into something that was difficult. I suppose I didn't do an introduction because I was so flustered, but our this series, this Understory series, is all about kind of the practical and emotional um, supports or guide rails that people can put in place when you're doing the difficult work of writing about trauma, that support you and enable you to do it, but also enable you to move through something rather than kind of getting into something and finding it very triggering and re-traumatizing and very difficult to manage. So I'm curious if your process is, if you have anything kind of in your process that you feel supports that aspect of the work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's really, writing from the body
Mm,
is the main thing. And I had an experience, about a decade or more ago where I attended a workshop with Jennifer Pasteloff and Lydia Yuknovich, where the
mm,
process involved doing yoga poses or dancing or whatever, moving in our body and then dropping down and writing, moving, dropping down and writing, moving, dropping down. And I discovered this incredible, beautiful thing in that process that was such a gift to me was the writing from my body and
mm,
bypassing my mind. And
mm,
so really that dropping down into it, the body uh, accesses the truth faster than the mind can figure it out.
mm.
And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, it's the discovery of fire. This is how I need to write. And that became conscious. So now what I'll do is, walking is definitely something I do in the process of my writing. So I might feel that call and I'll be writing for a while and then I'll get up and go for a walk. If
Mm,
I feel triggered, I might I hate that word anymore, but if I
mm,
get activated, let's say that,
mhm,
if I get activated, I might, just get up and do some push-ups on the wall, take a little walk around the room, drink some water, do some, eye stuff where I look, like that, and then back and center to,
mm,
move my eyes back and forth. And these things have really opened up my writing process for me in the last decade and enabled me to write the really hard things I write. Because I wanted to say while you were talking, that's all I write about.
mm.
I
Yeah.
have I mean, I can't say it's totally all I write about, but there's a lot of trauma in my background. So, and I write personal essay and memoir,
Mm,
uh, you know, and now I'm able to write from a place of wholeness. So,
mm. And wholeness was a word I had so much fun is the wrong word. I was so fulfilling to go deep in your work the last couple of days and like read in all the little nooks and crannies. And wholeness was a word that kept coming up. And
mhm.
similar, I think our process, walking for me is a big part of my process. I'll often do a lot of work, a lot of kind of head down, like ruining my eyes, like deep in something, and then just get out and go for a walk. And it's on
Yes.
the walk that I'm like, huh, these things start clicking, and I start. And one of the real things that stood out for me from your work was wholeness. So I'd love you to talk a little bit about it, maybe how you define it and what it how it feels in your body and how it supports your work or how it feels like I don't know if it feels like a vehicle for your work or like the destination for your work. I'm just really curious how you think about it.
I think of it, my writing in terms of that's where my writing comes from, is from a place of wholeness.
Okay.
And I think what we might be able to frame this as one way is to say we need a different relationship with our trauma
Yeah.
because I am not my trauma.
Mm,
Okay, so I come from a place of wholeness. There's nothing wrong with you, and there never was, is the name of my Substack,
mm,
because I'm pointing toward that truth and that essence that lies within each of us. That really is untouchable and sacred and innate, no matter what we've lived through, no matter what trauma we've undergone. There is a place in us that is whole and complete, and absolutely safe. And so that's a fundamental ground,
mm,
but it's not like I've arrived at that fundamental ground and then I live there all the time now. Um, it's just that, it's like I loved what you wrote about the understory because
mm,
there's a lot of work that goes on. And I think it's important to develop our emotional IQ
mm,
as writers because it's going to be really difficult to access these things that you and I are actually talking about today without some basic fundamental groundwork in growing our emotional IQ, our ability to even recognize our emotions. I mean, like there's just so
mm,
much work I think that's fundamental. But I would never say don't write until you've done the work.
mm,
But I loved what you said about that private work and that understory where where we do this work and we sort of bring that to our writing. So it sort of works in tandem with the work I do. I actually, what happened for me is that my writing is writing me. It's
Mhm.
writing me now. And
Yeah.
so it's changing me, it's transforming me. And and so as that happens, it becomes more and more clear. And I have more and more clarity. And I finally, after 10 years of writing, for example, about what happened to me at 14 years old in The Lottery of Girlhood, which is an
Mm,
essay that is in my Substack that you can access. It took me years to finally get to the place where that could come through with clarity.
mm,
Okay. And from a place of wholeness. So it sort of works in tandem, the work that we do, but the writing works on us, right?
mm.
So I don't know. Do you have any questions about that? Or that was a
Yeah.
lot. Okay.
I'm gonna plug in my phone because that is something I didn't do
Oh,
before we started. But I, first of all, if you are watching this and you have not read that essay, I'm gonna leave the link underneath this. It is absolutely worth your time. To spend some time in that essay. I would actually recommend reading it twice. Because I think it. Yeah, I don't want to spoil it for people. I think you should go and engage directly with the work. I really relate to what you say about the kind of balance between the personal work, the inner work, and also the writing work. And I
mhm.
suppose in my life, what that has meant is for years I didn't, for years I wrote in my journals and kind of sustained myself, getting up early before work, writing in my pajamas. And like that was the time that I was able to be myself. And then I would go and work in an office and like deal with all the office politics and all the ups and downs of life. And like the rest of the day, in a lot of ways, was kind of a write off. But it was like that 2 hours for myself in the morning at 6 a.m. in the dark, like that was gold. That was precious. And even if none of that writing has been published or like it doesn't need to be published, it has already done its job for
Mm,
me. Like it
yeah.
has sustained me. And if you are able to have a practice that keeps you alive, like keeps you connected with yourself, um, that is worth more than New York Times bestseller and a book
Yes.
deal and an agent. Like
Yes.
I just want to be alive.
Right.
um,
It keeps
and it
me
is,
alive. My writing saved my
yeah,
life. So I agree
same.
100%. It's not about publishing. Yeah.
No, publishing, I'm sure would be lovely,
Yes, it's a
but
nice
it's a different
byproduct.
thing.
But yeah,
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 it's a different thing. It also, I think, speaks to the difference between the industry and the craft, or the industry and the practice, because
yes.
it is, I'm really the embodiment that you have talked about as part of your process. There's something so rooted about that, like something so primal in it. Um, and I suppose I'm curious. I also have a complicated relationship with the word triggered, but I do have to manage activation in myself.
Yeah.
If I'm going to sit down and write about something difficult, I need to be careful about how I do that, so I don't make my life more difficult, or I don't damage the kind of life I've built in the aftermath of trauma, by kind of going back in the past and poking at a wound, which is in a way a funny instinct, but for me has
Hmm.
always been the instinct, because I want to go back, I want to understand, I want to like unpick what happened and be able to see it from all the angles, and that helps me. Um, but I suppose I have needed to develop skills to be able to do that safely, and I'm really curious um, how you manage. Are there, for example, are there topics that you feel I'm never going to publish on this? Like this is too private. This is too raw for me. Or are there things that you have learned times of day that it's difficult to do that kind of work, or particular topics or particular relationships? Again, I don't, Kelly, I don't want to ask you to share something that's beyond your own sense of comfort, but I think it is useful for people to understand how you think about boundaries, and are they something that feels beneficial in your writing, or how do you think about safety in your writing for yourself first of all, and then maybe also for your reader?
Um, safety for me is not an external thing.
Hmm.
So it is really, there are things I can do to create safety for myself, to feel safe, that are in alignment with my internal safety, which is in the work that I've done. What I have come to learn is that safety is something that is internal and within me, and it's not something I can find outside of me. So when I demand to be safe, or I need you to make me safe, or any of those things, I've learned that no, that's my job. It's my
Mm,
job to keep me safe. So
mm.
in writing, it's my job to keep me safe. And in reading, it's my job to keep me safe. It's not the writer's job. It's not
Yeah.
the professor's job. It's not the workshop leader's job. And it's nobody else's job but mine. And I have
Mm,
agency and autonomy. And so this is something that I have to begin to be responsible for. And this is where I have to be in relationship with my own trauma so that
mm,
I can create safety for myself. And so wherever we're at and whatever that requires, I think that's really important. And I have to be aware of that and honor
mm,
that. And so if there's something that like I really don't censor myself, I'll write about all of it. But
mm.
that doesn't but I won't necessarily at all publish it. In fact, most
Yes.
of it is not. I have thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of
Mm,
pages, and because I write no matter what, and I do
mm,
not censor myself from writing things if it comes up for me, and if it's a really, really tender place where I get really activated, I may not be ready to write about that yet, and I
mm.
don't have to.
Yeah.
And I also am a private person. So I'm not
Mm,
just throwing everything out there. I'm very conscious and aware of what I choose to share and publish. And I am, pretty transparent and really share some really dark, deep stuff. But I'm ready to do that. See, before
yeah.
I do that, I'm ready to do that. And the other thing is that we do really find this agency in this and this sense of safety as we take control of our own narrative.
Mm,
See, I let other people define me. I let other people tell the story of me. I let the stigma in society say, this is who I am based on the trauma I've gone through. I let everybody else tell my story and I internalized it. Now, through writing, I began to claim my own story and
mm,
shape it and craft it. And I find safety in craft too. When
mm,
I'm just writing a scene, when I'm just writing dialogue, I can give myself constraints. I'm going to write one scene, or I'm going to write a dialogue between two people. Um, I'm just going to write one page, but
mm,
constraints can help with that. So, yeah. So the other thing is it's really important to bypass the mind. That's the very
mhm,
key thing. And so any of the ways and practices that you can find that help you bypass your mind and get into your body, which might be yoga. For me, I became a facilitator of yoga nidra, which
mm,
is the yoga of sleep, which is not about sleeping. It's really about relaxing and getting beyond the mind. And just doing those kind of practices, you will begin to experience getting out of this constant chatter up here
mm,
and into the body and the heart, which is where you can write from wholeness, see, and write from truth without censoring it, defining it, being reactive to it. Um,
mm. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that definitely feels like a through line, that there is something about the mind, almost being an op to this kind of writing, that
Yeah.
um, it is about finding another way to kind of pull a story out, or find your way through a story that doesn't rely on your intellectual self. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, because your intellectual self is very different than your traumatized, like your most traumatized self is often, very physical, very, very much embodied. Um,
And you'll notice people will say, we're writing around something.
yeah.
Usually that's the mind, the intellect. We're
Mm,
trying, and that's okay. I've written around and around and around, and I don't even know what I'm writing about.
mm,
And eventually I discover, oh, but that's my mind, trying to go through it. That's okay. I'm
mm,
just saying that when I finally access the truth and the clarity, that it comes from beyond the mind,
mm,
and using my intellect is a way that I, you know, avoid or escape or dissociate too. I'm not
mm,
saying the intellect is a wonderful thing, and I wish mine had been nourished from a young age,
mm.
but here we
Yeah.
are.
But it is a wonderful thing, but it can also be um it can also be kind of an easy way out sometimes. Like you can rely on your intellect in a moment that it's actually not about your intellect. Like it's about something deeper than that or something more profound. Um, and like I do think I was really struck what you were saying about how craft can be something that actually um gives you some guardrails around a topic that could be complicated. And
Yes.
if you go into it saying, like, I want to understand this dynamic between these two people, like I'm going to write that dialogue, or I want to understand like the physics of that scene, like how did that actually unfold beat by beat in that moment? It gives you, it just gives you a little bit of structure, and structure can be maybe this is my cerebral self coming out, but for
Yeah.
me personally, I feel like structure can liberate. It can give you really room to stretch. Um,
Yeah, and craft is structure, isn't it?
yes.
So
Yeah.
when I write a scene, I turn myself into a camera and I'm
Mm,
just reporting the scene on the page. That gives me a distance, and I can come from awareness instead of being immersed in the scene.
mm,
And this can be a very difficult scene, but the real practice is to just write the scene, not to,
mm,
not get into the meaning of it, not get into any of that. Just report it like a
yeah.
documentary or something.
Mm,
That's also very helpful.
mm, for
But
sure.
I agree
Yeah.
with you, that craft is structure, and I
Yeah.
fight it. I have fought that for years, and I finally got it that, "Oh,
Mm,
wait a minute, I need this."
mm, yeah. And there's a moment, at least in my own practice, that I have to throw the structure out. Like I have to just I have to mind map, or I have to use imagery, or I have to paint, or like there is a moment when whatever it is you're trying to communicate, it's just too messy for a nice neat 3 act structure, or
Oh, yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
there is a moment when I think you can really rely on exploration and something broader than kind of what writing looks like. Like if you're watching a movie about a writer, they're sitting neatly at their desk and typing, and like there's none of the agony, there's none of the you mentioned that you write on the couch. Like I write on the couch all the time. Like I write lying down in bed, leaning on the pillow,
Mhm.
getting ink all over the bed sheets. Like it doesn't need to look like something. It's what it feels like. It's what the embodiment what allows you to kind of tap into that.
Yeah, um, I think both sides, I agree,
Yeah.
and it definitely goes back and forth, and then the craft helps give me the structure,
Mm,
um, and then that, like I said, I get that call from inside is more what you're describing, more
mm,
of a right brain process, and that creative flow that
mm,
I tap into,
mm,
and that really is coming from more from the body than the mind. There are writers who are very intellectual and brilliant, and when I read them, and they're also usually very successful,
mm,
I don't feel their writing in my body.
mm,
I feel it cerebrally,
mm,
and I tend to gravitate toward writers who are more in the body. But
mm,
I enjoy the intellectual exercise of reading a really brilliant writer who's very cerebral and really doesn't have that that embodied
Mm,
component, but
yeah.
but we all know what I'm talking about, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Eh, just as you mentioned, Kelly, that the kind of more cerebral are often the more like more successful in terms of kind of external, you know,
Right.
I'm wondering if you have recommendations for people who are interested in doing. I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit because I didn't prep this question with you, but people who are writers who you feel are very embodied, or writers who you feel really capture what it means to like convey a story, not using that cerebral lens. If you have a few ideas now, fantastic. If you want to think about it and send me some, and I'll put them under the video in the post, that's also great. Um,
Sure. I will definitely. I would recommend reading Lydia Yuknavitch,
yeah.
and in
Me too.
memoir she wrote Chronology of Water, but I would say all of her fiction is also embodied. Her
Mm,
writing is very embodied, and has helped me a lot to, and it helps me to read embodied writers, and then
mm,
that inspires me and calls that forth in my own writing.
yeah,
It sort of calls me. I'm like, oh yes, I feel it.
mm,
I connect to that wholeness. It's
yeah,
wholeness is what it is.
it is.
And then I would also recommend Therese Mayat, and her Heartberries book is very embodied, I think. um, I just read Liz Gilbert's All the Way to the River, and I felt
Hmm.
absolutely
Me too.
was embodied and not
Yeah.
cerebral. Yeah. Um,
Those are some
and
great
that's all that
suggestions.
comes to mind. I might come up with more later, but yeah.
Yeah, those are some great suggestions, and I will put them underneath as well for people to look up. I would like, Kelly, if it's okay with you, to talk a little bit about your experience because you are a writer with lots and lots of years and of experience and like hundreds of thousands of words under your belt, but you also are experienced as the curator of the Voices on Addiction column with the Rumpus, and you're continuing that work through your newsletter. I'm curious if you could say a little bit about what it is to support other writers who are sharing deep stories, or if there are things that you've kind of learned in that process that you think would be useful for writers who are kind of exploring these kind of themes or topics themselves in their work.
Sure. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's at the heart of, it's part of who I am, and who I am as a writer is
Mm,
to be the kind of curator and editor that I am as well. And that
yeah.
is to support people's work that comes from hard places and comes from
Mm,
trauma and comes from, difficult places that are stigmatized and marginalized by our society, whatever that may be.
mm,
And so my Rumpus Voices on Addiction column had a fantastic run of 9 years,
mm,
and we closed it in May. And then I moved it over to my Substack in a new name called The Whole, W
mm,
parentheses HOLE.
mm.
And that's because recovery puts the W in the hole.
Yeah, yeah, it's
So,
perfect.
and I created a section in my newsletter just dedicated to that. So I didn't want it to be confused with
Mm,
what I write generally myself, but then I have this section where I will feature these guest writers who submit, and I have the submission guidelines and everything on my Substack. And so really I have a passion for um, breaking the stigma around all of these taboo topics that we're writing about. Basically, this is
mm,
what, when we say writing about trauma, we could say writing about taboo, right?
mm. Yeah.
Because these things that are traumatic are usually things nobody wants to talk about or
Mm,
face or address or admit to, or any of those things. So as a curator and editor, I just really like to get those stories out there. And I mean, are you looking for what I look for in a story, or what?
I mean, I was going to ask if I think you are open for submissions, so there might be folks watching this who would like to share stories. So maybe you could say a little bit about what you would like to receive.
Well, there is an extensive, really complete guidelines. So
Great.
be
Okay.
sure to go to my Substack.
I'll
There's
include
nothing wrong
those.
with you, and there never was. And I think there's a link here somewhere.
Yeah.
And go into, you'll see there up on the navigation page, it'll have a section that says the whole WHOLE. And there's also one that says Voices on Addiction. That's just so you can access the archive of Voices on Addiction essays. And they are accessible there as well as at the Rumpus, and you can read those to get a good feeling of what I'm looking for. But then it's
Hmm.
expanded. I've expanded those guidelines to include recovery from anything. So it's not just focused on addiction and the impact of addiction on everyone, which it was,
Mm.
for families, not just the addict, but anybody impacted by addiction, which is basically all of society. But anyway,
Yeah.
but it was to break that
Everybody.
stigma and admit it, like, so
Yeah.
that's what the purpose of the column was. And I think it served in a tiny way, it served that purpose. But on the
Absolutely.
whole, I want stories of recovery from anything. It could be you were raised in a cult, you're deconstructing religious trauma. It could be sexual abuse, child sexual abuse, sexual assault. It could be any kind of trauma that you are in recovery from and what that story is about.
Mm.
And the guidelines will help a lot with that.
Amazing. Yeah. And I will definitely include the guidelines in the post as well as it goes out.
Okay, great.
Um, Another question I love to ask writers is, are there pieces that you have written or work that you have done that is particularly meaningful to you and perhaps didn't get the kind of accolades or attention or audience that you feel it deserved? Or like often as writers, there are pieces that, for whatever random algorithmic reason, reach more people than other pieces that are perhaps a little closer to your heart or feel more precious or more important in a way. So I just love to give writers an opportunity to shout out if there is anything that you're like, this. I feel like this really captures what my work is all about, or um, something that I'm particularly proud of. If there are pieces that you want to mention now, that's great, and I can include the links as well so people can go and read them. But I'm always curious what writers actually love in their own collection of work.
Wow, that's a good question. I would say all of it. No,
Okay.
but no.
Book a day off, everybody. You're going to enjoy it.
Um, I think Don't Diagnose Me, I Was Born in a Cult is a really
Yeah,
good one that I would recommend for
great
people
place
who
to
are
start.
here specifically who want to write about trauma.
Mm.
That's a good breakdown of how to increase our emotional IQ and begin to get connected to that essence and that wholeness that we are. All of my work talks about that. I really love the one I wrote, and I'm trying to think of the title about my grandson. What was the name of that? It's escaping me. You should have told me that you were going to ask me this.
Should have. I should have.
um, yeah, it's just titles are escaping me right now.
Yeah, fair enough.
I
But
love the one I wrote about the gorilla, something about the gorilla. So,
amazing. Okay.
that was a fun thing to write, but that was kind of cerebral.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
It's even interesting to read pieces that, maybe come from different angles. So I feel like a handful of suggestions for people to as a starting place if they're new to your work is a really generous thing. Um so yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, and Secrets of the Two by Twos is on
Okay.
Memoirland. And
Oh
that's
yes,
about,
I've read
I
that.
was,
Yes.
I was born and raised in a cult. And
Mm,
boy, talk about a lifelong process to get ready to write about that or even to recognize it. Um,
mm,
but yeah,
yeah,
I mean, yeah. So Secrets of the Two by Twos on Memoirland. And you
yeah,
can probably access it on my Substack as well. So
yes. It's a beautiful piece.
thanks.
Yeah. Really recommend it. Okay,
Thank
we
you.
we are coming up on time, but I
Okay.
always like to in these conversations, I feel like we wander and we touch on different themes and topics, and it's very easy to get to the end of it and not say something that feels really important to say. So I am just going to scan through my notes and see is there anything that we haven't talked about that I would really like us to. Um, And perhaps there might be something else, Kelly, that you would like to add before we conclude our conversation.
Yes, um, I would. I would like to say that we've talked a lot about the body, but I do believe that spirit has a role in this as well.
Mm,
And maybe if you read Emerson's essay, The Oversoul, there's something bigger than me that helps guide this process and that
mm,
knows at all times everything. Um, and so I kind of tap into that, and I think of that as more as the spiritual component. So there's the spirit, there's the body, and there's the mind. And the mind, if we do the work and are centered and coming from wholeness, acts as a vehicle and acts as a tool rather than running the show.
mm,
So, and I would say that we write from the body and witness the mind, not to repair what is broken, but to see that nothing essential ever was.
mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't let, so we're going to claim our story. And I'm not the story you made of me. I first heard that from Lydia
Mm,
Yuknovich. And I'm not the story you made of me. So I get to tell my story, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah. I I don't know that there's a more perfect way to finish.
Okay.
Um, Kelly, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Um, this has been a beautiful conversation. Thank you, everybody who's here. Um, I hope that you will follow Kelly's work. If you are a writer, consider submitting something. I would love to submit something. um, but this has been a beautiful conversation. I'm so grateful to you. Um, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And, we'll do it from my end and I'll bring you on my Substack and interview
Lovely,
you. So,
lovely. I
and
look
because
forward
I want
to
to hear all about the work you're doing and the activism. And it's a wonderful, uh, beautiful expression that I see in your work
thank,
and your reach out and your writing about trauma and helping. It's just awesome. So thank you.
thank you, thank you. I feel sometimes like a little duck over here flapping like a lunatic. Um, but it is really meaningful work to me as well. So I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much.
It's meaningful to all of us. So thank you, Claire. All right.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Wish you a beautiful day. If you missed the talk, don't worry. I'll share it next week.